Hello, everyone. Welcome to this second episode on the topic of transforming Guy McPherson's message. We're getting a lot of interesting feedback, a lot of interesting commentary, and I first want to introduce our guests. First of all, my colleague and co-host Michael, who's in Thailand, and my buddy, colleague Jamie Gilchrist, who's in Ohio. And welcome, Jamie. So let's just dive right in. I first want to give Jamie and the rest of y'all a brief little recap of kind of where we netted out last time. And that is that we have we've got a serious predicament compounded by a crisis. The predicament is abrupt climate change that we're in the midst of, as best presented and articulated by Professor Guy McPherson. The crisis on top of that predicament is that nobody's talking about it.
Right, right.
We've got this giant asteroid headed towards planet Earth, and nobody's talking about it. When I say nobody, I mean none of the media, barely gets any mention in even local media, much less national media. So, people talk about climate change, but they're not talking about abrupt climate change of the kind that threatens humanity with extinction, along with most complex life, if not all complex life, given all the self-reinforcing feedback loops. So, we've begun to analyze what is at issue here, and I think one of the things that's at issue is that when Professor Guy McPherson delivers his message about gloom and doom and abrupt climate change, he links it with near-term human extinction.
Correct.
Right. I think that's what's given it its marketing boost. Right.
Yes.
And what it does is it takes everyone off the hook. It means, look, we're all going extinct. There's nothing we can do about it. So don't worry, you're off the hook. Do whatever the hell you feel like it. Hey, go ahead, Jamie. Go.
Yeah, I just feel like he's beyond so wise, but the presentation provides an off-ramp for activism.
Totally. It's like, where do we go from here? Well, we're all going to die, so we're in hospice. We're basically in a form of planetary hospice.
Hospice, right.
Planetary hospice. Okay, not very inspiring of action. So I say that we either, and I'll talk with Guy McPherson about this myself, but that we either transform the Guy McPherson message or we create a Coke versus Pepsi alternate message, right? And the two messages have the first half in common. The first half is abrupt climate change, right? That ship has sailed and it's hitting Mother Earth now, and it's going to get a lot worse, okay? That's abrupt climate change. The second half of the story is where we diverge. Guy McPherson says certain near-term human extinction, like in maximum, 8 or 9 years. And what we're saying is instead of that certain outcome, it's build your own adventure, right? And we have the tools to build our own adventure because we have the tools and technologies to build arcologies, right? And the project Noah's Arcology with a K brings those all together in a planetary platform with some very noble missions, objectives: decommissioning and safely storing all nuclear power plants, nuclear warheads, and other nuclear devices, other instances of super toxic chemicals and compounds, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually, so there's certain things that we need to accomplish with more urgency than others. Decommissioning and safely storing nuclear is key, because if we just leave all the nuclear power plants be and we go abrupt climate change, add 10 degrees C, we go Mad Max, industrial civilization collapses, global dimming collapses, we go plus 3C almost immediately, and that sets us on the roller coaster ride to plus 10C. Basically, most life on Earth goes extinct, most species, and we're left with a hot, dead world with extreme weather, mostly dead world with extreme weather, and with a bunch of nuclear power plants all going Fukushima at once. And what that does is the ionizing radiation is powerful enough and dense enough that it can actually fry the atmosphere and leave us with an atmosphere-free, permanently dead Mother Earth, right? That's now radioactive as well. So the negative scenarios are in intensely negative. I mean, it couldn't be worse. You know, it's one thing if we wipe out humanity. It's another thing if we wipe out life on Earth. So in the face of that, you know, what do we do? Well, I say we do everything we can to build a network of arcologies co-located with all the nuclear power plants and nuclear missile silos, so that the members of those arcologies, the residents of those arcologies, will sign up for the mission in advance, that they're going to be part of taking, safely decommissioning and storing all the nuclear, power plants, materials, warheads, etc. Other arcologies will be focused on preserving species and ecosystems, and in some cases transporting species to other latitudes, other geographies on planet Earth that will be more hospitable. All this has to be done with extreme weatherproofing and everything. These arcologies have to be extremely weather resistant, heat resistant. They need to address clean water through a combination of aquifers and stored water that gets recycled and purified and filtered and all that good stuff. So, basically we're talking about building, semi-underground cities. I say semi-underground because parts of them, the upper layers, are going to be like greenhouses for growing food, but we'll also stockpile massive amounts of grains and other vital foods, so that the members, the residents of the arcology will have, food taken care of for decades to come, and they can really focus on job one, which is decommissioning nuclear, saving species, etc. Right? So basically, we can do that. Now, how effective will it be? Well, that's a matter of debate, but we've been getting comments from the first episode of this series that saying, "Oh, that's impossible. It's too late." I mean, give me a break. We've got this throbbing global economy, measured in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. And, we're churning out all kinds of stuff, low tech, high tech, everything in between, churning out massive amounts of food, which can be purchased and stored. And we've got everything we need to rapidly build our culture. What we need is, a Manhattan Project style and scale and scope, planetary program to build arcologies all over the planet, preparing for the worst, not praying for the worst, for crying out loud, but preparing for the worst, right? Yes, we're praying for the best. We're hoping for the best and praying for the best, but we're preparing for the worst because things look pretty darn bad. And then with that as a platform, we can say, okay, now we've got this last line of defense, which are arcologies. We don't know how effective they'll be, but we've got very smart people working very hard to make them as best as we possibly can in the short window of time that we have. What else can we do? Well, we can do geoshading and hopefully forestall, this massive spike in temperature. We can do things like community cafes to feed everyone on the planet so that we don't go Mad Max and suffer a collapse in civilization, which results in an immediate +3 degree jump due to the loss of global dimming. Extremely important effect. So basically, we want to avoid going Mad Max at all costs. But we're kind of tipping on the brink of that with the massive overpopulation we have, financial meltdowns, economic downturns, abrupt climate change kicking in and whipping our butts in places like Florida and Houston and all over the Caribbean and Africa and Greenland, everywhere. So things are getting bad really quickly. We need to do something. I say we don't have time to dick around speculating as to what could or couldn't work. We need to figure out where to place our chips, and we need to get to work.
Yep.
Doing everything we can to save whatever we can, as much as we can, of life on Earth.
Chips.
Yeah, from one perspective, the Earth itself, right, is the ark. And it's the Earth itself that needs to be regenerated in a way that is not only will it continue to sustain life, right, but that we're going to be able to move towards that more perfect world that we want. Sometimes I think apocalyptic discourse devolves into a sort of defeatism where, okay, there's not much we can do to salvage, society, and all of the, and there's those who would even, want it to collapse, civilization, that would somehow be the best thing for planet Earth, and I've certainly heard that. I suppose a small part of me tends to agree with it. But I think seeing the Earth itself as the ark, that which needs to be preserved and regenerated, I think tends toward a more global response, rather than a sort of escapism, right, into the bunker, into the underground, arc. that instead those just kind of become, cells or pods or what have you, from which will grow a movement. That movement being simply the movement to save life.
You have very, very adeptly touched on a movement I'm familiar with. I come from a federal and state and county government business level, and that is exactly where the fundamental prepper movement comes from. But what you just described is taking the prepper, it's so low functioning, the prepper movement into, it's not prepping, it's survival skill development. Survival skill development. Survival skill development. Prepping is what people do when they're ready for the end. Survival skill development is what people do to accommodate an unknown future.
And I would add survival infrastructure development. That's what the arcologies largely are. So survival infrastructure and stockpiling of essential goods, inputs, food, fuel, tools, spare parts, etc.
Critical.
Yep. And what we're talking about is actually survival community development. We're going to do a lot better as a community consisting of lots of different specialists in lots of different fields with lots of areas of expertise. And then what we're really talking about with the planetary Noah's arcology, which will span the entire world, that's the concept, is that it will be a planetary collective intelligence, and in fact, a radical collective intelligence, because it'll get to the root of the world's most daunting problems. Radical and radical, radish, root all come from the same Latin root, which is radix, which means root. And so we're going to get to the root of it with radical collective intelligence. So we're going to be all connected and building off each other's ideas. There will be an artificial intelligence layer that will essentially be like the Match.com of connecting minds, connecting people together. Say, like, you folks need to talk because we've identified that you have the highest odds of filling this key missing piece of this puzzle, because amongst the 7 of you, you have the right combination of expertise. That's what we need to fill in this missing piece. So have at it and pull in who you need, right? So this sort of matrix layer, this artificial intelligence layer that connects us all, we're going to need that level of intelligence, which will exponentiate way beyond the most powerful forms of collective intelligence that have ever been observed on planet Earth, whether it's NASA or the Soviet Union in full retreat in the early stages of World War II, the Viet Cong, what have you. Whatever forms of collective intelligence that we've seen on planet Earth will be blown away by what we're about to see with the development of radical collective intelligence. So, and with radical collective intelligence, we'll be able to design and develop all kinds of technologies and systems to facilitate us meeting our objectives: decommissioning nuclear, cleaning up the ocean, sequestering carbon, geoshading, all that we need to do I don't know in what order, but look, as long as there's a critical mass of humanity alive, we're going to be fighting like hell.
That's right, Jamin.
And in the process of fighting like hell, we're going to learn how to come together, work together, and finally cooperate rather than competing with each other and trying to kill each other and succeeding. We're going to figure out how to come together and actually manifest this radical collective intelligence, which we're going to need to figure out all the solutions, all the possibilities to save life on Earth. So we go from being net destroyers of life on Earth to being these bountiful stewards of life on Earth, using, of all things, tools. What are we going to do this with our bare hands? Let's all hold up our bare hands to the sky and do, natural geoshading. No, we need tools. So we're a tool-using species. Tools largely got us into this mess. Tools are going to have to get us out to the extent that there is an exit, right? So let's create the exit. Let's use our collective intelligence. Anyway, I'm kind of preaching off my soapbox. In fact, why don't I just go on mute and let you gentlemen chime in?
Well, I do appreciate the long view you're taking there, Jamin, where not only are we focused on survival, right, as opposed to preppers, where it's kind of like, okay, well, really nothing's going to survive except for those of us in the bunkers, but thriving, because looking at this crisis state, it's a liminal state of affairs, right? That represents a real opportunity to move to new modes of production, right? New forms of community, to regenerative solutions, right? This kind of critical state, I think, represents nothing less than the opportunity for a course correction, right?
Yes.
And we're charting the course. Charting the course far into the future, with an eye to the future, but also with that sense of urgency that the likes of Guy McPherson are so vocal about.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Your wisdom, it's extremely correct. It's a course correction. The problem is saying course correction and getting a buy-in by everybody in a local, state, or national facility. That's the problem. We have to find a way to make the off-ramp of course correction the only choice.
Well, consider this, Jamie. We don't need to get everybody at once, right? Let's start with, say, the wealthy folks who are building these elaborate bunkers, right?
Yes.
We go to them with the following logic. We say, look, you're worth $1 billion. Your net worth is $1 billion, right? You've really gone all out and you spend $100 million on this bunker.
You're on
right?
it.
You've got $900 million in an economy that's about to go up in flames. Look, why not invest a chunk of that, if not all of it, in Noah's arcology? Why? We're going to clean up the nuclear, or we're going to make the best possible effort to clean it. Look, there's no guarantee we're going to succeed, but we're like the firemen rushing into the buildings. We're doing our job, right? And whether we succeed or whether we fail, we're playing full out. So you get the nuclear insurance. You get the survivability of life on planet Earth insurance with all the other measures we'll be taking. So when you finally do come out of your bunker, it won't be a radioactive wasteland. Your kids can actually come out and play, right? And also, the new empire, Noah's arcology, will smile very, very kindly on those who funded her, right? So versus being kind of pissed off that you didn't break out your checkbook generously. So that's our message to the wealthy folks who are building bunkers, and there's a lot of them. Okay, and they've got a lot of money. And then, so that's kind of like the beginning of the market. That's the first segment that we go after, one of the first. Who are the others? Well, shoot, let's scratch our heads and see what comes out. We don't have to make the exhaustive list now, but suffice it to say, we'll come up with a smart strategy for marketing this, for funding this, and for getting smart folks to come in, because quite frankly, what other option is there? What else is on the table for maximizing our odds for survival? What, getting on getting on the seat of Elon Musk's spaceship to Mars? Going on mute.
Go, Jimmy.
It's optionless. The war on drugs, prohibition, rescuing cats, all of those have options. Survival is optionless. Period.
Yeah, we've got to pursue survival. We don't have any other option, so we might as well get smart about it and get together on it. Anyway, back to you, Michael.
Yeah, survival's, I think, the no-brainer. It's probably the single most basic human instinct, human need. But what we're talking about here, I think, involves a number of different human motivations that we need to work with, not against, because survival, I think the instinct for survival doesn't really kick in until there is a sense of, a threat, right, to life, to one's own life, to the life of those one it's connected to. And I think that is going to happen. That's not something that we necessarily need to sell to anybody. You either get it or you don't at this stage. You either have the foresight or you don't. But in time, as the threat becomes more imminent, having these kinds of arcologies in place, right, are going to the extent that one, they exist, two, that the infrastructure is adequate to the task, to the occasion. People will, of course, turn to such arcologies. It's kind of like during any kind of catastrophe. It's like, people turn to where the food is. People turn to where the water is. People turn to those who have resources, or whatever the case may be. Some people are prepared. Others, the majority, for whatever reason, are not. We don't need to sell this necessarily to the masses. Yeah, some rich folks, some people, the visionaries, the people who have been working in this space for decades, who have been working on arcologies, et cetera. Even some preppers. This is a very large tent, so to speak, one that we want to include all of life. Of course, that's quite an unrealistic expectation. But of course, that's what we want to do, right? Is to save all of life, as much of it as we can. And I think, to the extent that we approach it not as some kind of elitist, exclusionary or exclusive, club, right? But we're turning to people who have the resources, who have the wherewithal, right? Whether they have the money, the skill set, the vision, those people who are positioned to do something about it now, so that when the time comes and people are looking for survival, that's where I think the movement as such begins to actually grow, because we're probably not talking here about the kind of catastrophe that's just going to crash down upon us, you know, in a matter of minutes, right? This is probably not going to be like, you know, Hawaii in a state of emergency because they think there's a ballistic missile coming in from North Korea, right? And they have 15 minutes to run to the bunker. This is going to be something that is going to dawn on more and more people as the months and maybe years go by. And I think that it's that sense of imminent threat coupled with a very clear way out that is what will produce the movement. I think you really have to have both taken together in tandem to produce a movement that's going to yield real results.
Absolutely. Well said. And I think that basically, so what we're doing is kind of like we're starting one curve over here. The curve of increasing despair and fear is going to just grow naturally as abrupt climate change takes its course. Meanwhile, we'll be building ours up over time, and where they intersect is where a critical mass of people, gets dialed in that, wow, we're in the midst of abrupt climate change and we're under a serious threat here. And B, hey, solutions exist, and leading the pack is Noah's Arcology, because it's the most complete, the most holistic, it's planetary in scope, but it seeks to address all the world's most daunting problems, even in a hothouse state.
Yes.
After the majority of life has been wiped out. It's like, we're not going to give up fighting no matter how much of life has been wiped out. As long as there's a couple of us left, or a few hundred, or whatever, the minimum population is to be viable as a species, we're going to be fighting on.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with everything both of you gentlemen have said. We're going to have to find a way to recipe this into the psyche of current America, because current America is not listening. I don't know how we do that, but it's going to display itself soon. America, current America, isn't listening. However, while we're not listening, the facts are a tsunami against us.
Yeah, and the facts keep piling up at an increasing rate. I mean, we're staring down the barrel of an ice-free Arctic. Very likely this summer. So the entire northern air conditioning system of planet Earth will be completely broken.
It could be 6 to 9 months from now. What?
Yeah, and we're already suffering from the effects of a greatly reduced ice quantity volume, as well as surface area in the Arctic. That and 68 other self-reinforcing feedback loops that Guy McPherson has identified are all weighing down on us with increasing force. So our time window may be very, very short indeed. So we've got very little time to really make this an idea virus that just infects everyone. The idea virus that, yes, hey, number one, see what we're doing is we're combining two things. We're combining the problem with a solution. The problem just alone as a dangling thing is not that sexy. Oh, look, here's news that you're gonna die. Who wants to hear that? Nobody, right? So it's rejected by most, and the ones who do assimilate it basically use it as a kitchen pass that they don't have to do anything about it because because Guy McPherson said we're all gonna die. Well, not just he said it, but I mean, there's actually, there's very sound arguments for near-term human extinction. I don't question that. I'm saying let's overcome that not all of us, but even if it's 1% of us or 0.1% of humanity that survives,
Yes.
let's have a new mission of saving as much of life on Earth as possibly can be saved. And a big part of that is cleaning up our mess, our nuclear mess, our poisoning of the oceans, ocean acidification, greenhouse gases. Now, we can't all do this in a day. It may take us millions of years. It may take tens of millions of years. Well, what else have we got to do? Just lay down and die? No, we need a recipe for saving and restoring life on Earth.
Agreed. Okay, I got to jump off.
Good hanging with you.
Great hanging with you, Jamie. Michael and I may continue on for a little bit longer, but
I hope you do. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you, Michael. And I'm going to jump, but there's a huge amount of rumination heading back to when we reconnect. Thank you.
Awesome, Jamie. Thank you, bro. Have a great night. We'll see you. We'll see you next time. All right, and Michael and I will continue.
Okay.
So,
yeah, thanks, Jamie. You know, I think there's going to be, you know, but we're talking about these catastrophic situations, and you know, we've talked about some of the ramifications, in particular the nuclear, you know, the set of nuclear threats that say power plants, nuclear power plants, and weapons pose. But there's a whole lot of them, I think, that are going to be coming down the pipeline. Kind of hard to say in advance what they will be or in what order they will occur. But we're already starting to see stresses on society from climate change. And those stresses will, of course, not only increase, but accelerate. And I think as they do, the stresses on society will be such that people will be looking for a better way of life, period. You know, even just putting aside the fact that, you know, ultimately we're trying to save, I mean, ultimately we're not just trying to save life. It's not just about survival. It's about thriving, bringing out the best in humanity. I think that to the extent that our ecologies, as we design and develop them, as the vision becomes more clear to more people, they need to represent in and of themselves a better way of life, right? They need to represent unto themselves, you know, a regenerative and a revolutionary way of life that's appealing, so that it's not only that we're not only looking to them as these sort of, you know, rickety life rafts, but actually as ways to put us on a new trajectory, to chart a new course, to show what's possible. You know, inevitably, I think these are going to represent sort of utopian experiments, right? And I think as that utopian impulse that is largely repressed in society becomes further out of reach, I think people will become even more desperate and for it. And representing that kind of utopian possibility, I think is what is going to make these arcologies, you know, not only necessary but desirable.
Totally, totally. And they can be desirable regardless of the extent to which we've progressed along the trajectory of abrupt climate change. So, yeah, we can make this a movement that's a present day thing, not just, you know,
because the Earth is the ark, right? And so it's not, one difference between the mythic, Noah story of the flood and what we're talking about here is it's not like we're all going to, not all, it's not like the select few are going to enter these arcs, survive, and then repopulate the planet. Okay, well, that may be an extreme case scenario that I suppose is within the realm of possibility. But I think to the extent that there is a realistic path forward, it's going to be along the lines of regenerating the earth, revolutionizing the economy, and to the extent that these arcologies speak to that, I think that's going to speak to people.
Well, so I hear you loud and clear, Michael. My current view on where we're headed, and I don't have a crystal ball, but just assimilating, the best of Guy McPherson and Paul Beckwith and many others, it appears that we are on a trajectory for a massive jump in global average temperature within a very short period of time, like a decade or so. We're talking about, adding 10 degrees C in 10 years, rough numbers, okay? And that would simply wipe out most of life on Earth, including most of humanity. In fact, all of humanity, minus whoever happens to be safe, however temporarily, inside of a bunker or an arcology. Now, up until several weeks ago, I was still preaching the possibility of doing some sort of mass scale geoshading so that we could cool the planet, buy some time, and then in the meantime, as with the time that we buy, implement some of the longer term measures, including but not limited to carbon sequestration, cleaning up the oceans, transformation of the global economy, holistic land management, holistic ocean management, holistic atmospheric management, all kinds of just basic things, which, in the future, you'll look back and they seem obvious, but today they're like, what? You say these things, like, what? But these are the things that we urgently need to implement, but we need to buy time through geoshading. Well, I don't see the world moving in the direction of geoshading. I see the world moving in the direction of off the edge of the cliffs, Thelma and Louise style. And I'm saying, what kind of parachute can Thelma and Louise fashion on their way down to the floor of the Grand Canyon that they can design, build, and pull the chute on prior to, the pink convertible hitting the floor of the Grand Canyon, or the light blue, or whatever color the convertible is. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like we're almost out of time. We could be months away from Mad Max, and then therefore, runaway train temperature rise, starting with an initial boost, not initial, but an incremental boost from this point forward of plus 3 degrees C in a matter of weeks or months at the most, because of the loss of global dimming. So without geoshading, we're toast. But I really don't see planet Earth moving in the direction of geoshading. So let me kind of kill two birds with one stone. Therefore, I'm saying, hey, in preparing for the worst, we need arcologies that are weather resistant, that can withstand the plus 10 degrees C, and also hordes of people trying to get in, who didn't have a seat at the table for whatever reason, when we close the doors. And, some of those folks will actually need to be repelled. And that's just the reality of having a functioning arcology. You can't just open the doors and let everyone come in. So it's the migration problem, but magnified tremendously. Now, having said all that, with Noah's arcology as a program, as a planetary movement and organization to make this happen, we start out at whatever scale it makes sense to start out, and then we scale up and scale up and scale up as much as we can until industrial collapse, right? Or other factors, extreme weather, or whatever other factors. So, and in fact, we may not even get very far at all. I'm just saying, however far we're going to get, we'll get a heck of a lot farther if we start now than 6 months from now. Now, having said that, with that as sort of like, the tip of the spear that penetrates the global consciousness of what this organization and movement are doing about this, to the extent that that wakes people up, combined with, you know, kind of like where the things start to cross, where they cross actually gives us an opportunity as a platform. That intersection gives us a platform for saying, okay, do we really want to continue further down this route? Is there even a possibility at this point of implementing some sort of geoshading that might buy us some time so that we don't go fully over the edge of the cliff, Thelma and Louise style? But I think the really hot story that's going to get people shaking and moving and shaking is Noah's Arcology, not geoshading. See, we got to lead with something. So I say we lead with Noah's Arcology, and if that gets us to, if that gets humanity and Mother Earth to a point where we can actually do some serious geoshading and buy some more time, great, let's do it. I'm all for it. But if we don't, at least we'll have some arcologies that can do some of the basics and help, promote and provide for a whole world, a world in which life can continue. Going on mute, and feel free to hit me back with any questions if I've been confusing.
No questions. It's pretty clear to me from the conversations we've been having going way back that there's sort of a dilemma as to, whether we're dealing, whether we are to deal with a more, imminent threat of extinction, right? Which seems to me to be the trajectory we're on. It seems like the more we've, been addressing these issues, the greater sense of urgency, and a more long-term forecast where we're not necessarily saying either way how much time we have left, but rather the ability to do something about it beforehand. And I think it's largely a question of emphasis more than an either or. But I think no matter what, we need to strike a certain balance, both in the messaging and in the methodology that we employ to chart our way forward. Precisely because any plan that is predicated upon, near certain catastrophe that doesn't in the meantime address the prospect of averting such a catastrophe, I think is mistaken, just as it would be mistaken to take the other approach and to sort of ignore, which is what society is largely been doing, the whole catastrophic scenario that Guy McPherson, has been talking about for decades. I think it's about somehow finding a way to address both, and I do think that our ecologies have the potential to address both. I mean, if we look at our ecologies as they've been thought about, since I guess the 60s or 70s, whenever it kind of became an emergent field, it was always more on the short term. The long term rather than the short term. It sounds to me like we're kind of taking Noah's Arcology to the other extreme, and I think I would just like a somewhat more mediated approach between the two.
Yeah, well, okay. How about this? I'm sorry. Were you done, or do you have more to say?
Done. That's it.
Okay. So how about this as a mediated approach, or middle of the road approach? We don't know how much time we have. Like, these are basically level with the rest of humanity, right? As opposed to take some approach where we kind of dumb down or minimize.
We just don't know. We don't know.
We just don't know. Look, here are the facts, and we run the best models that we have on the best global modeling software that we have, and here's what the results indicate. Right, given the uncertainties that exist, we don't know when the predicted big 50 gigaton burst of methane from the Arctic will happen, or the permafrost, etc. So there's a bunch of unknowns, but here's what we do know, and here's what we can model, and blah blah blah, and and because of the global dimming thing, there's a serious risk of, that if industrial society collapses, bam, like a +3 degree centigrade jump, that would be curtains for us. It'd be curtains for any kind of construction efforts we wanted to do, building our college. That window would be slammed shut. That's one of the reasons, incidentally, and I don't want to, rat hole on this or go off on a tangent, but that's one of the reasons that we've been putting some of our chips in community cafes to feed the world, as a platform for feeding the world, precisely to avoid the collapse of industrial civilization. Because, see, when people are hungry and there are food riots, that can be, the bale of straw that breaks the camel's back. Let's keep the camel alive and walking, shall we? Because we need industrial civilization among many other. Well, number one, we needed to keep global dimming happening, right? That's keeping us alive artificially, as the case may be, but hey, by whatever means. And number two, the continuation of industrial civilization means that we can build these arcologies using modern construction methods, concrete, plexiglass, whatever materials we need, solar panels. We need Elon Musk's factories cranking out the solar panels in order to power these arcologies, et cetera, right? So anyway, we don't know, but we do know that we need to, keep the lights on, keep the economy chugging away, build arcologies. What's our plan? Here's our plan, right? Can we accelerate the plan? Yes, we can accelerate the plan. How can we accelerate the plan? By you getting involved, by you sitting on the fence and either, throwing rotten tomatoes at us saying, ha, 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 you guys are trying to, it's a lost cause. Get off the fence and come on over to our side and let's work together on this. Let's do as much as we can. That's the rallying cry. Just consider the case of the Soviet Union, the day they got invaded by Germany. Right, Germany breaks the treaty, invades the Soviet Union. It's early in World War II. Soviet Union is absolutely devastated, shocked, completely unprepared for this onslaught. And so let's say that the average citizen asks, okay, what's my government's plan? Well, at that moment, they probably lack a plan, frankly, because they didn't anticipate it. So a plan has to be formulated, right? Well, the Soviet people came together and relocated the industrial base of the country from west to east in full retreat from the Nazi onslaught, and drew a line at Moscow and Stalingrad and held both those lines, right? So, but that whole plan and set of tactics and everything had to evolve. It had to evolve very quickly, but it evolved, right? So we can point to that as a parallel example and say, look, we don't know if we're going to be exterminated by the Nazis. We don't know if we're going to be exterminated by abrupt climate change, but let's do something. In fact, let's do better than something. Let's do the very best that we can. And that includes Noah's Arcology and several other projects in flight. Join us. We need you. We can't do it without you. That's the message. That's the message that I say to everyone right now at this moment, because we don't know how much time we have left. We don't know how short this window is going to be. And, so we may want to figure out tactics and platforms such as community cafes and holistic land management to keep society together, to keep civilization running, so that we can build the arcologies and do other critical things that we can only do when we have industrial civilization operating, and we can't do once that and its close cousin global dimming both collapse at once. Going on mute.
Well, yeah, I don't know what to add to that, Jim. I think we're just grappling with the very real threat of short-term extinction. I mean, abrupt climate change is basically already here, right? Depending upon how it's to be defined. But it's and I'm no McPherson. I'm no climatologist, not even a scientist, right? But the best models we have to work with are those that are produced by those, who have spent a lot of their life studying these phenomena. And I think what we can say with certainty is that, yes, climate change is real. it's, worse, worse than we thought, decades ago. It seems to be accelerating. And because we don't know, and it's a situation where, as a matter of survival, we kind of have to take the worst case scenario as being the one that we're preparing for, while at the same time not putting all of our eggs in that basket.
Yeah, exactly. Preparing for the worst, hoping for the best, preparing for the worst, and evolving day by day as we, step into a very unpredictable and yet extremely perilous future. The bad news just keeps piling up. I mean, quite frankly, I mean, look, if you have any inclination to do something transformational, now is the time to jump in. Sitting on the sidelines, or worse, insulting those who are working hard to save life on Earth, including potentially yours, and your families, but life on Earth, right? Grow some. Holy shit. Let's put our heads together and look. Are we gonna hurt someone or something by putting our heads together and exploring the possibilities? Come on, grow some. Jump in. Talk with us.
Yeah, there's an irony that those who are the most convinced about the most dire predictions, right, and those who are completely unconvinced seem to be in the same boat in terms of inaction.
Amen.
Right? So it's kind of like, okay, you're one of those who thinks there's nothing we can do, that it's all but over. Well, but then at the same time, those are also, it can be the loudest critics of those, who deny climate change altogether, right? At least as it's caused by human activity. But at the same time, it's like, well, what does it matter if you can't do anything about it? You might as well be one of those, ignorance is bliss people who deny climate change, because you're going to go down anyway. Instead of saying, only love remains, why don't you just say, only you fill in the blank, right? In a sense, it doesn't really matter. But those are two extremes I think we need to steer clear between, right? Rhetorically and otherwise, because I think the messaging, even the marketing, it needs to be one that motivates action.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I apologize for letting my frustration spill over there. That's not representative of who I want to be. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, but yeah, we look with life. Look at so many beautiful things that life has produced, that nature has produced. Humanity has produced some beautiful things. Humanity as a whole has been just a colossal failure because we've now brought on abrupt climate change, which is all set to eliminate either all life or almost all of life. So while humanity is nothing to write home about, life itself is very beautiful. And I actually believe that humanity can be reformed. And that's a whole set of topics unto itself. But regardless of what happens with humanity, let's clean up our mess as best we can and leave planet Earth in a condition where life is at least possible. It still has an atmosphere, for example. To achieve that, or to maximize the odds of that, we take care of nuclear, and we safely dispose of all things nuclear, right? Dispose of, store, etc. Among other measures that we can take to clean up our mess. and then maybe we gracefully exit after that, or not gracefully exit. But at least let's do what we can to let life continue. And if we can, reform ourselves and humanity can continue, so much the better, right? But let's not just drift along with this current that seems to be taking us to extinction. Let's vigorously resist that current and, in fact, override it with a current of love and compassion and hope and inspiration and creativity and collective intelligence and collective power to use our greatest gifts for the greater good, saving as much as can be saved of life on Earth. I don't know how else to say it or what else to say. If that's not inspiring, you're on the wrong YouTube channel. And we invite you to stay with us as we sort through this together. Like, as you can tell, we don't have all the answers. We're just, groping around. In several hours, we'll be kicking off the next, in about 11 and a half hours, we'll be kicking off the next episode of The Social Club at the End of the World, which I'm very excited about. I think we'll just broadcast that live on YouTube. But, and we'll be talking about these and many other topics. Anyway, back to you, Michael.
Well, do you want to wrap up? I don't have much to add. I'm actually interested at this point in seeing some of the viewers' comments, and even more so looking forward to getting some more people like Jamie on our Hangouts, and even starting a whole Noah's Arcology series.
Well, yeah. Well, we've already got the Noah's Arcology series. We've done 2 episodes of that. This is part of the series called Transforming Guy McPherson's Message, right? Which is getting way more hits than the Noah's Arcology series, right? So let's, but back on the Noah's Arcology series, we'll build off of that. In this series, let's continue building off of Transforming Guy McPherson's Message. And why don't we kill all those birds with one stone, all the birds you just mentioned, by, here's what I propose. Let me do a screen share the current topics, the current comments from the previous video, and then we can address those, and in the process invite everyone to, in turn, reach out to us and say, hey, we'd like to be a part of this, right? We'd like to join your conversation. We'd love to have you join the conversation. This is the coolest conversation on Earth, right? Because it's the conversation that maximizes the likelihood that conversations will continue, right? And it's kind of like that book, Finite and Infinite Games. The point is that the most of us possible continue playing. Ideally, everyone continues playing, but at a minimum, let's let life continue to play. Anyway, Michael, what do you say? Shall I do screen share and we look at the comments and answer them as best we can?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, it'll just take me a moment to find the stuff. Bear with me. Yeah, see, it's already gotten 215 views. There's 16 comments. Some of those are probably mine. And but anyway, let's go ahead and do a screen share. And it's called window. Yep, that's it. Google Hangouts. Okay. All right, here goes. Da, 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 da. In fact, I think this is a great way to actually invite people in, pull people into the conversation, right? Because what are we doing? We're addressing their comments. So let's just kind of go through these comments. Did you say Guy McPherson started a nipple piercing club? Well, you remember my comment from episode 1. I was just saying that, the message of near-term human extinction repulses me like, men piercing their nipples. And no, I didn't say that Guy McPherson started a nipple piercing club. So Ace Otana, I've been in contact with Guy for about 4 years now. During the first 6 months, I tried to fault his message. I really tried. Not only did I end up agreeing with Guy's message, but noticed it was conservative. He hadn't factored global dimming into account. He later revised his time frame from 2030 to 2026, not just because of global dimming, but because Peter Wadhams had told Guy that his time frame was conservative because the feedback loops are multiplicative, not additive. Essentially, feedback loops strengthen each other massively. So after trying to fault it, I found it was actually conservative. 3.5 years later, even the 2026 timeframe is looking conservative. From someone on the outside of all this, it may look like we're trying to be pessimistic or doomist, but we're actually being constantly surprised that we're always conservative, even though we're trying to hit the mark dead on. We're always below it. It's always a little worse than even we thought. It just keeps getting worse and much faster than we originally thought. We're essentially trying to keep up with the data that flows in every day. One of the reasons bunkers and the like won't save you is because extinction events are extremely long-term. Well, first, let me address what he said up till now. First, I totally agree with everything you've said up to this point, Ace. Completely agree. No disagreements. The bad news keeps piling up. One of the reasons bunkers and the like won't save you is because extinction events are extremely long-term. They don't hit, then go away in a few centuries. It takes millions of years for the Earth to recover from them if the Earth doesn't go Venus. So whatever bunker or ark you have, you'll have to remain in them for a few million years at least, potentially forever, which is looking ever more likely. Well, okay, so here's the thing I would say to that. You know, we're going to be doing all this geoengineering stuff. And, you know, that may sound laughable and all that, but keep in mind that technology continues to increase. And, you know, technological development is, of course, going to suffer a serious setback when we have to, you know, a fraction of humanity has to retreat into, you know, a few hundred or a few thousand arcologies. But nonetheless, humanity will be able to act with radical collective intelligence to do way more than we've done in the past. So we're going to be able to do some pretty cool stuff, and hopefully we'll be able to shrink that time frame from, you know, millions of years to maybe thousands of years, maybe even hundreds, depending on what we can accomplish. So anyway, am I being optimistic? Yes. Am I, you know, an idiot? Maybe. But, you know, we've got to look. I'm simply not willing to throw in the towel. That's the bottom line. And, you know, so I invoke such things as technology and geoengineering and stuff like that. And look, either we're going to be able to do something meaningful or we're not. And the only way we're going to find out is by trying our best and then being patient and seeing what happens. So I simply don't buy that the only option is to, you know, hang out in a bunker eating canned peaches and waiting millions of years until the Earth naturally heals herself. There's a lot of things that we can do for Mother Earth that she can't do for herself. Continuing with Ace's comment, despite knowing all that I know, I still wake up happy every morning. Happiness comes from within. Never forget to be happy and enjoy each day. And keep the videos coming. I'm looking forward to watching you and Guy talk things through. All the best. Michael, anything to add to Ace Otana's comment from 12 hours ago?
No, nothing to add there.
Okay.
To what you've said.
All right, great. Naked environment. Should we be saving seeds instead of saving bullets? I say save both. In fact, I'm talking about, you know, I've mentioned stockpiling food in the arcologies. Naked environmentalist. Look at how we are still being fooled on Fukushima nuclear power. People will believe what they want, and the media reinforces the majority beliefs, right or wrong. Look at cell phone radiation. Even with the warning from manufacturers to never have it closer than 5 millimeters to the body, the media is silent. The mantra today is, buy today, worry never, we can fix this. Yeah, these are good points. These are good points. Taking /up serpents and posted. all joking aside, I guess I have always believed that Guy McPherson's message was abrupt climate change leading to live a life of excellence, and don't understand why people continually present Guy as though his message is somehow flawed. I think you are merely restating what Guy has been stating all along, and no need to throw him under the bus. He's on our side. No, well, I want to be clear. I don't think we're throwing Guy McPherson under the bus. I'm simply challenging his conclusion that we're absolutely going extinct and there's nothing that can save us. I'm saying, well, what can we do? Right? And what can we do to save as much as possible of life on Earth, regardless of whether humans survive or not? Right? I think the more important thing is, can we save life on Earth? And major bonus points if we can save some of complex life so it has a chance to evolve into something, intelligent again, and hopefully they'll crack open the time capsules and see how stupid we were in the run up to 2018. Back to you, Michael. Anything to add or subtract?
Yeah, well, I also don't think we're by any means throwing Guy McPherson under the bus. If anything, it's the sense of urgency that is so important to me anyway. I don't, if we were really throwing him under the bus, I suppose there would be no, incentive to cite him and his work.
Yeah. No, enough on that. We're clearly not. What we're basically doing is taking his message that abrupt climate change is happening, and we're simply saying, well, we're choosing to respond in a certain way, but we're not at all questioning his message. Abrupt climate change is happening a lot faster than anyone thought.
Yeah, and and I think Guy's message, and his research. I think just to be fair, needs to be balanced. Needs to be balanced with other findings as well. Other methodologies, by which I don't mean other than the scientific method. I just mean, to be scientifically minded is to be open to the possibilities of being wrong, right? Of the fact that, what we're talking about here is a hypothesis, a theory that also is factual. But, the interpretation that he has come to, and that I personally don't have any, that I personally don't see any reason to debunk, is that we don't have as much time, nowhere near as much time as most people think. I think that message is that message of urgency is what makes it all the more important. It's not the part about how right or wrong it is. It's kind of like going to a doctor. This is one of the going to a doctor, and the doctor says, you should really stop smoking, because it turns out, you thought maybe you had, 10 years to live. Well, it looks like it's more like 10 months, right? Now, you can either just say, okay, well, there's nothing I can do, 10 months to live, I'm just going to, smoke all the more. Or you can say, well, he's probably wrong. I probably have more like 10 years, so it's okay to just kind of keep it up at the same rate. Or you could say, oh, wow, 10 months is a lot shorter than, and so I should probably stop now, right, to give myself any chance of survival. And I think it's I think it's the latter conclusion that we're coming to, and saying, look, if we have less time, then that means we need to act faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. I'm all for that. I mean, look at how quickly we're turning this series around, right? Doing a follow-up in less than 24 hours. All right. Next one from, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. Other serious contaminants, meaning all the Microsoft Silicon Valley toxic waste sites. You clean those up yet, Jamin? Or are you just going to hide in your elite bunker? Well, first of all, I don't have an elite bunker. What I'm proposing is that we create a communal, a whole, a whole set of communal, not just bunkers, but arcologies, weather-resistant arcologies, to address all of our problems, including but not limited to the cleanup of contaminants, wastes, etc. And yes, including all of those products generated by the Silicon Valley. So thanks for that. And yes, we're on it. by the same member of YouTube commenting, Biosphere did not work. So you can talk all you want about, quote, weatherproof arcology, but talk is cheap. Well, I mean, Biosphere was one experiment. Look, if after his 100th experiment, Thomas Edison had said, look, I've tried 100 times, none of those have worked, light bulbs are impossible, I think we all see the folly in that line of reasoning. And I think it applies here too. Okay, you guys are exploring an interesting concept, but from such as simple human perspective. We only need to look around to witness an evolution in technologies. This does not happen in the natural world and has never been studied anthropologically throughout our history. What is happening? We are in the age of AI. AI is God, always has been, and we are about to be redirected toward a transformation with the help of ET into a new age. However, humans will face mass depopulation during this phase. Unfortunate but true. I totally agree. And there's 3 replies to his comment. Let's read those. The previous commenter wrote, why don't you watch the documentary Mirage Men by Mark Pilkington and realize your ET dream of being saved is CIA military propaganda? Greg Beals responds, nobody is talking about being saved. The CIA are largely run by off-planetary groups. There is no solidarity in the CIA, and both elements are part of the directive for the humans, earthbound types. Vivi responds, yes, the pituitary increases ACTH from increased serotonin. The kidney adrenal glands are crucial to the training. This is why celibacy is required for males. So female orgasm converts dopamine to serotonin, and then with trance dancing, there is piezoelectric energy of the collagen, and this creates ultrasound that bypasses the blood-brain barrier. So you increase the brain serotonin levels and then increased ACTH, then increases the potassium ratios to sodium in the brain. At advanced level, then no salt is allowed, so it is just like an electric eel. The charge is stored in the lecithin that myelinates the nerves. So ejaculation is mostly lecithin. This is why males have to be celibate, and that feeds the brain, as Taoists call it. So our spirit is biophoton energy. With eyes open, we emit biophotons. With eyes closed and visualization, we turn light around. And there is secret consciousness as source of light. It is energy that is reverse time energy. So that our spirit can leave our bodies and merge with the cosmic mother via the pineal gland. Only human females have their pineal gland synchronized with the lunar cycle. Living in nature as group, 29.5 days menstruation synchronization. This is from the Eland Bull ritual, the oldest spiritual training. A female at first menstruation as the strongest. Da, da, da.
You know, I think she or he may be onto something here. What do you say?
Well, you tell me. What do you think?
What say it thou?
I'm kind of missing the connection, but can you tell me what you're getting out of this?
Well, just the very fact that Kundalini energy is being referenced, I think, is enough to know that we should take this comment seriously.
Okay, say on.
That's all. it's not that I can make sense of it.
Yeah,
it's not that at all.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so to be taken seriously, and we've got a number of questions. So, Vivi, would you be good enough to maybe break it down for us in more layman's terms so we can understand where you're going with that, please? Okay, and then Osama number 5 writes, no matter how much hope you have or what technology you possess, you will pray for death. I think what Osama is trying to say there is that you know, life is going to be so miserable. Conditions are going to be so miserable on this hot, dry, lifeless, dead, you know, semi-radioactive planet that we'll wish we were dead. And that may be the case for a lot of humanity. I still have high hopes that enough of us will be inspired to live through the harsh conditions. And actually, we can make it it's possible that we can make it quite nice inside of these shaded arcologies. Right. And, you know, only go outside when the weather permits and enjoy whatever outdoor activities, however clothed we may be. And, you know, and then retreat to the arcology when the weather turns sour. Anything to add to that, Michael?
No.
Okay, great. All right, next we've got Robert Callahan. Independent biomes are unsustainable through time. The shape of water and the green blob. And then he has a link. We might as well chase the link here for a moment. And see what the shape of water and the big green blob. Anyway, so I
happen to on the face of it, I happen to agree with that statement.
Yeah. Okay. So let's take it at face value for a moment. Let's assume it's the case. Independent biomes are unsustainable through time. Then, if that's true, and let's assume that it is, then what we need to do is design and build our arcologies, our arcs, so that they exchange with the rest of nature, much as a house, skyscraper, sailboat, automobile, or other things inside of which human beings can be put, right? I don't know what more to add to that. Anything to add to that, Michael?
Well, I think it's an extremely important point that they need to be interdependent, right, with one another. Sufficiently so. They also need to be sufficiently permeable, right, with within the surrounding environment, and then there's the through time part. These I don't think these are not intended to be permanent. I see them at
very good points. Exactly. Okay. All right. I think we've addressed that one. Next question by Climate Roulette 31. How much would these arcologies cost? A lot. I don't know. We have to design them first, but a lot. But however, on a per person basis, the cost, I think, would be a very small fraction of what people are investing in bunkers. So it's definitely a cheaper by the dozen situation. And also, you know, who wants to be just, you know, with a handful of other sociopaths inside some private bunker? It's much nicer to be part of a thriving community. All right. And then there's a reply. They will barter tickets for Mars, so you can trade in your Elon Musk Mars arcology ticket for Jamin's ticket to hell. Oh man. Okay. Next comment. This is from Cindy from Dallas. Hi, Jamin. It's your Dallas-based female Vader partner again. And just as context, I do a weekly thing in Seattle where I go to the University of Washington dressed as Darth Vader, and I'm leading and I sing songs, and I've got beautiful signs, and I'm leading a statewide movement to rid the state of Washington of all violent criminal drug cartels. Anyway, so Cindy reached out and said, hey, you know, I'd like to do this same thing in Dallas, Texas. I apologize for my to which I replied and said, "Great, let's do it." I apologize for my huge response delay. In addition to work, I'm the parent of 4 kids, so you can imagine life is chaotic, blurred, da da da. Anyway, I'll do my best to email you. We'd love to have you in Dallas. Awesome. All right, that looks like a private email, so I won't share more of that. but anyway, bottom line, we're going to go to Dallas, Texas, and do the Darth Vader thing there. One thing she did mention was she loved where I make a challenge to the men of Texas. It's like, when the media show up and they say, well, why is this woman representing Texas and defending Texas from the drug cartels? Well, we put out the call to the men of Texas, but apparently the men of Texas are out to lunch or something. Or maybe they're afraid. And, that'll rile up the Texans. Come on and stand up for Texas, just like we're doing in the state of Washington. Anyway, those are the comments for this week. I really like this practice of going through the comments because it kind of gives our listeners a voice, right? A way to, say something and be heard, right?
Yeah,
have it aired.
I'm enjoying it.
Right.
Yeah, me too. The audience participation, much appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you would like to join us, if you're watching this and you think, wow, I could, just like Jamie joined us tonight for the first time. And there was a first time for both of us. You remember your first time, Michael. I remember mine. Reminds me of that comment in the movie Traffic. But anyway, just jump in. The water's warm. And this is how you can actually make some positive contributions to, if not the reality, the fantasy of saving as much of what
the water's warm, Jamin. Is that a pun?
Yeah, it's cooling water from a nuclear power plant. So.
The water is warming. Yeah, jump on in.
Exactly, the water's warming. Jump on in. All right. Anything else to add for tonight?
No.
Well, actually, I've got one thing I'd like to ask you. I've made my impassioned plea. If you had 30 seconds or less, what would you say to any human being on planet Earth about joining our movement?
Sorry, you broke up there for a minute, but I think you're asking me to make an impassioned plea. Mine would be as simple as it's a conversation worth having. The fact that there are dire predictions that ought to be taken with the utmost seriousness. Not that I'm, persuaded. It's not that I'm always persuaded by them all, but the fact that they're out there and that I haven't heard any serious scientists say there is no sense of urgency, right? So no matter where you set the projection, how far out, I think the point is adapting this notion of arcologies, which is, in a sense, been around for decades, in another sense, has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Adapting that to, to our times and the crises we face, I think is both worthwhile and maybe necessary. So join the conversation.
Yeah, I really love what you just said.
Get involved.
Yeah, and I just want to add one thing to what you just said. You don't have to make up your mind as, is it possible or is it impossible that we save ourselves? Just join the conversation and we'll figure this out together. Right? And if it's impossible, maybe we'll all do a bunch of lines of Coke or something.
Yeah, we're having a very open-ended conversation. And disagree, whatever. Continue to comment and feel free to join the conversation. Love to have you.
Awesome, Michael. Great stuff. All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching. And as Michael said, join the conversation and by whatever means. And you can contact us on the contact form at radish.org, by the way, is one way to easily reach out to us. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you. Michael, thank you so much. If you don't mind hanging out for a sec after I stop the broadcast, we can sync up a bit.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
See you on the next one.
All right. See you soon. And thank you all. Arigato gozaimasu. See you soon.